Thank you, Chairwoman Lee, for welcoming us today. Observation at the poll and during the voting process, counting and certification process is a critical role and a critical tool to increase transparency in the electoral process and provides the public, candidates, political parties, nonpartisan entities, international organizations, and others with important insight and oversight of the electoral process. Additionally, for decades, the House of Representatives has operated its own election observer program. It does so under the power granted to the House in Article 1, Section 5 of the United States Constitution to, quote, be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, end quote. Observers are able to gather facts in an objective, non-obtrusive, bipartisan manner on congressional races that may be close and could possibly come before the House in the form of a contest. Indeed, there is a long-standing practice of working collaboratively on a bipartisan basis to send observers to congressional districts as a part of this program. The role of an election observer, unless otherwise authorized by law, is just to do that, to observe and monitor the election and post-election process without violating the privacy of a voter or disrupting the election. Election officials have made significant strides in increasing transparency in the electoral process and providing an opportunity for election observation. For example, some now live stream the process and counting of ballots, as well as the canvassing and certification of election results, so anyone can watch and observe the process for themselves. Many others allow the public to view the testing of voting machines before an election. We must be clear. While transparency is always preferred, there is no evidence of widespread fraud in the United States elections, nor is there any evidence of widespread malfeasance on the part of election officials, their staffs, or election volunteers. Furthermore, election workers are operating in an environment of increasing threats and harassments and are battling against a barrage of election-related mis- and disinformation. Election officials must balance the safety and security of their staffs and the ballots with the need for transparency and observer access. The Brooks Brothers riot of Florida in 2000 and the armed persons outside the elected facility in Maricopa, Arizona, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 2020 are illustrations of how a situation can quickly become a dangerous one. We also cannot ignore the legacy of voter intimidation at the polls or by poll watchers and challengers. Thus, a balance must be struck, one that provides all the necessary observer access while keeping in mind the lessons of past elections. While there is much room for improvement, as well as implementing new transparency and security measures, they all take resources. Resources many local election officials may not have to spare. It is therefore imperative that Congress provide state and local election officials with the funding resources they need to implement best practices for election observation, voter engagement, training, and election administration. I look forward to hearing today's testimony and working closely with the chairwoman to find ways to strike the balance between ensuring transparency and access to the electoral process and safety. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.